Hello, friends. Welcome to our story podcast. Let's begin the story. The Blue Umbrella by Ruskin Bond. About 4 years previously, Binya had knocked a hive out of an oak tree and had been badly stung about the face and legs. It had been a painful experience. But now, if it be stung him, he felt nothing at all. He had been immunized for life. He was on his way home from school. It was 2 o'clock, and he hadn't eaten since 6 in the morning. Fortunately, the kingora bushes, the bilberries, were in fruit, and already Biju's lips were stained purple with the juice of the wild, sour fruit. He didn't have any money to spend at Bharosa's shop, but he stopped there anyway to look at the sweets in their glass jars. "And what will you have today?" asked Bharosa. "No money," said Binya. "You can pay me later." Binya shook his head. Some of his friends had taken sweets on credit, and at the end of the month they had found they'd eaten more sweets than they could possibly pay for. As a result, they'd had to hand over to Bharosa some of their most treasured possessions, such as a curved knife for cutting grass, or a small hand axe, or a jar for pickles, or a pair of earrings, and these had become the shopkeeper's possessions and were kept by him or sold in his shop. Bharosa had set his heart on having Binya's blue umbrella, and so naturally he was anxious to give credit to either of the children. But so far neither had fallen into the trap. Binya moved on, his mouth full of kingora berries. Halfway home, he saw Binya with the cows. It was late evening and the sun had gone down, but Binya still had the umbrella open. The 2 small rents had been stitched up by her mother. Binya gave his sister a handful of berries. She handed him the umbrella while she ate the berries. "You can have the umbrella until we get home," she said. It was her way of rewarding Binya for bringing her the wild fruit. Calling Nilu, Gori, Binya and Binya set out for home, followed at some distance by the cows. It was dark before they reached the village, but Binya still had the umbrella open. Most of the people in the village were a little envious of Binya's blue umbrella. No one else had ever possessed one like it. The schoolmaster's wife thought it was quite wrong for a poor cultivator's daughter to have such a fine umbrella, while she, a second-class B.A., had to make do with an ordinary black one. Her husband offered to have her old umbrella dyed blue. She gave him a scornful look and loved him a little less than before. The pujari, who looked after the temple, announced that he would buy a multicolored umbrella the next time he was in the town. A few days later he returned, looking annoyed and grumbling that they weren't available except in Delhi. Most people consoled themselves by saying that Binya's pretty umbrella wouldn't keep out the rain. If it rained heavily, they would shrivel in the sun if the sun was fierce, that it would collapse in a wind if the wind was strong, that it would attract lightning if lightning fell near it, and that it would prove unlucky if there was any ill luck going about. Secretly, everyone admired it. Unlike the adults, the children didn't have to pretend. They were full of praise for the umbrella. It was so light, so pretty, so bright a blue, and it was just the right size for Binya. They knew that if they said nice things about the umbrella, Binya would smile and give it to them to hold for a little while, just a very little while. Soon it was the time of the monsoon. Big black clouds kept piling up, and thunder rolled over the hills. Binya sat on the hillside all afternoon, waiting for the rain. As soon as the first big drop of rain came down, she raised the umbrella over her head. More drops, big ones, came pattering down. She could see them through the umbrella silk as they broke against the cloth. And then there was a cloudburst, and it was like standing under a waterfall. The umbrella wasn't really a rain umbrella, but it held up bravely. Only Binya's feet got wet. Rods of rain fell around her in a curtain of shivered glass. Everywhere on the hillside, people were scurrying for shelter. Some made for a charcoal burner's hut, others for a mule shed or Bharosa's shop. Binya was the only one who didn't run. This was what she'd been waiting for, rain on her umbrella, and she wasn't in a hurry to go home. She didn't mind getting her feet wet. The cows didn't mind getting wet either. Presently she found Binya sheltering in a cave. He would have enjoyed getting wet, but he had his school books with him, and he couldn't afford to let them get spoiled. When he saw Binya, he came out of the cave and shared the umbrella. He was a head taller than his sister, so he had to hold the umbrella for her while she held his books. The cows had been left far behind. "Nilu, Nilu," called Binya. "Gori," called Binya. When their mother saw them sauntering home through the driving rain, she called out, "Binya!" Binya, Hurry up and bring the cows in. What are you doing out there in the rain?" "Just testing the umbrella," said Biju. The rain set in, and the sun only made brief appearances. The hills turned a lush green. Ferns sprang up on walls and tree trunks. Giant lilies reared up like leopards from the tall grass. A white mist coiled and uncoiled as it floated up from a valley. It was a beautiful season, except for the leeches. Every day, Binya came home with a couple of leeches fastened to the flesh of her bare legs. They fell off by themselves just as soon as they'd had their thimble full of blood, but you didn't know they were on you until they fell off. And then later, the skin became very sore and itchy. Some of the older people still believed that to be bled by leeches was a remedy for various ailments. Whenever Bharosa had a headache, he applied a leech to his throbbing temple. 3 days of incessant rain had flooded out a number of small animals who lived in holes in the ground. Binya's mother suddenly found the roof full of field rats. She had to drive them out. They ate too much of her stored-up wheat flour and rice. Biju liked lifting up large rocks to disturb the scorpions who were sleeping beneath, and snakes came out to bask in the sun. Binya had just crossed a small stream at the bottom of the hill when she saw something gliding out of the bushes and coming towards her. It was a long black snake. A clatter of loose stones frightened it. Seeing the girl in its way, it rose up, hissing, prepared to strike. The forked tongue darted out. The venomous head lunged at Binya. Binya's umbrella was open as usual. She thrust it forward, between herself and the snake, and the snake's hard snout thudded twice against the strong silk of the umbrella. The reptile then turned and slithered away over the wet rocks, disappearing in a clump of ferns. Binya forgot about the cows and ran all the way home to tell her mother how she had been saved by the umbrella. Biju had to put away his books and go out to fetch the cows. He carried a stout stick in case he met with any snakes. First the summer sun, and now the endless rain, meant that the umbrella was beginning to fade a little. From a bright blue, it had changed to a light blue. But it was still a pretty thing, and tougher than it looked, and Bharosa still desired it. He did not want to sell it. He wanted to own it. He was probably the richest man in the area. So why shouldn't he have a blue umbrella? Not a day passed without his getting a glimpse of Binya and the umbrella. And the more he saw the umbrella, the more he wanted it. The schools closed during the monsoon, but this didn't mean that Biju could sit at home doing nothing. Nilu and Gori were providing more milk than was required at home, so Binya's mother was able to sell a kilo of milk every day, half a kilo to the schoolmaster and half a kilo at reduced rate to the temple pujari. Biju had to deliver the milk every morning. Bharosa had asked Biju to work in his shop during the holidays, but Biju didn't have time. He had to help his mother with the plowing and the transplanting of the rice seedlings. So Bharosa employed a boy from the next village, a boy called Rajram. He did all the washing up and ran various errands. He went to the same school as Biju, but the two boys were not friends. One day, as Binya passed the shop, twirling her blue umbrella, Rajram noticed that his employer gave a deep sigh and began muttering to himself. "What's the matter, Babuji?" asked the boy. "Oh, nothing," said Bharosa. "It's just a sickness that has come upon me, and it's all due to that girl Binya and her wretched umbrella." "Why? What has she done to you?" "Refused to sell me her umbrella. There's pride for you, and I offered her 10 rupees. Perhaps if you gave her 12. But it isn't new any longer. It isn't worth 8 rupees now. All the same, I'd like to have it." "You wouldn't make a profit on it," said Rajram. "It's not the profit I'm after, wretch. It's the thing itself. It's the beauty of it. And what would you do with it, Babuji? You don't visit anyone. You're seldom out of your shop. Of what use would it be to you? Of what use is a poppy in a cornfield? Of what use is a rainbow? Of what use are you, numbskull? Wretch, I too have a soul. I want the umbrella, because I want its beauty to be mine." Rajram put the kettle on to boil, began dusting the counter, all the time muttering, "I'm as useful as an umbrella," and then, after a short period of intense thought, said, "What will you give me, Babuji, if I get the umbrella for you?" "What do you mean?" asked the old man. "You know what I mean. What will you give me? You mean to steal it, don't you, you wretch? What a delightful child you are. I'm glad you're not my son or my enemy. But look, everyone will know it has been stolen, and then how will I be able to show off with it? You will have to gaze upon it in secret, said Rajram with a chuckle. Or take it into Terry and have it colored red. That's your problem. But tell me, Babuji, do you want it badly enough to pay me 3 rupees for stealing it without being seen? Bharosa gave the boy a long, sad look. You're a sharp boy, he said. You'll come to a bad end. I'll give you 2 rupees. 3, said the boy. 2, said the old man. You don't really want it. I can see that, said the boy. Wretch, said the old man. Evil one, darkener of my doorstep. Fetch me the umbrella, and I'll give you 3 rupees. Binya was in the forest glade where she had first seen the umbrella. No one came there for picnics during the monsoon. The grass was always wet, and the pine needles were slippery underfoot. The tall trees shut out the light, and poisonous-looking mushrooms, orange and purple, sprang up everywhere. But it was a good place for porcupines, who seemed like the mushrooms, and Binya was searching for porcupine quills. The hill people didn't think much of porcupine quills, but far away in southern India, the quills were valued as charms and sold a rupee each. So Bharosa paid 1/10 of a rupee for each quill brought to him, and he in turn sold the quills at a profit to a trader from the plains. Binya had already found 5 quills, and she knew there'd be more in the long grass. For once, she put her umbrella down. She had to put aside if she was to search the ground thoroughly. It was Rajram's chance. He'd been following Binya for some time, concealing himself behind trees and rocks, creeping closer whenever she became absorbed in her search. He was anxious that she should not see him and be able to recognize him later. He waited until Binya had wandered some distance from the umbrella. Then, running forward at a crouch, he seized the open umbrella and dashed off with it. But Rajram had very big feet. Binya heard his heavy footsteps and turned just in tune to see him as he disappeared between the trees. She cried out, dropped the porcupine quills, and gave chase. Binya was swift and sure-footed, but Rajram had a long stride. All the same, he made the mistake of running downhill. A long-legged person is much faster going uphill than down. Binya reached the edge of the forest, glade in time to see the thief scrambling down the path to the stream. He had closed the umbrella so that it would not hinder his flight. Binya was beginning to gain on the boy. He kept to the path, while she simply slid and leapt down the steep hillside. Near the bottom of the hill, the path began to straighten out, and it was here that the long-legged boy began to forge ahead again. Biju was coming home from another direction. He had a bundle of sticks which he collected for the kitchen fire. As he reached the path, he saw Binya rushing down the hill as though all the mountain spirits in Garhwal were after her. "What's wrong?" he called. "Why are you running?" Binya paused only to point at the fleeing Rajram. "My umbrella!" she cried. "He has stolen it." Biju dropped his bundle of sticks and ran after his sister. When he reached her side, he said, "I'll soon catch him," and went sprinting away over the lush green grass. He was fresh, and he was soon well ahead of Binya and gaining on the thief. Rajram was crossing the shallow stream when Biju caught up with him. Rajram was a taller boy, but Biju was much stronger. He flung himself at the thief, caught him by the legs, and brought him down in the water. Rajram got his feet and tried to drag himself away, but Biju still had him by a leg. Rajram overbalanced and came down with a great splash. He had let the umbrella fall. It began to float away on the current. Just then Binya arrived, flushed and breathless, and went dashing into the stream after the umbrella. Meanwhile, a tremendous fight was taking place. Locked in fierce combat, the 2 boys swayed together on a rock, tumbled onto the sand, rolled over and over the pebbled bank until they were again threshing about in the shallows of the stream. The magpies, bulbuls, and other birds were disturbed and flew away with cries of alarm. Covered with mud, gasping and spluttering, the boys groped for each other in the water. After 5 minutes of frenzied struggle, Biju emerged victorious. Rajram lay flat on his back on the sand, exhausted, while Biju sat astride him, pinning him down with his arms and legs. "Let me get up," gasped Rajram. "Let me go. I don't want your useless umbrella." "Then why did you take it?" demanded Biju. "Come on, tell me why." "It was that skinflint Bharosa," said Rajram. "He told me to get it for him. He said if I didn't fetch it, I'd lose my job. See you in the next video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.